Oh my god, GoldenEye 007 has finally come out after years of rumors of there being remasters or ports or whatever else. It's finally here on Switch and Xbox. We've been playing it a lot over the weekend, including even today. We did an online multiplayer stream, which worked shockingly well. And as one who grew up with the game, I want to talk about it more. And especially with the crew we have here, some of whom grew up with the game, some of whom played more of it more recently. And I want to find out what our thoughts are on it these days. Does it hold up? Is it still fun? And how is it as a port? And that's where I want to start off, because there's been a lot of drama on Twitter. Is this port busted or broken or weak or whatever else? You know, we've seen some developers, like there were some even early concerns with there being missing music from the watch screen on GoldenEye on Switch. Turns out that wasn't an issue. It's fine. It's in the game. I don't know why they had a video of that. But in any case, I want to find out, how are we feeling of it as a port right now? Joey, you played a bunch of it on Switch and Xbox. What do you think?
Well, I actually played it on Wii, so
oh my
God. Know
Joey,
what we're talking about here.
Joey.
Yeah, very weird to change the character model from Pierce Brosnan and Daniel Craig, but
but
really though, yeah, I remember playing this game a while back on Nintendo 64, so I was adjusted to the Nintendo 64 controls at first. That's where I tried them out on Switch first, playing it on this thing right here. But then I switched to the Pro controller, and I'm like, it was just not good. And we have a video on how to remap those button controls, but I don't feel like we should have had to do that, especially when I switched to Xbox. I switched to my Series X, and it just worked flawlessly. They've been modernized for a modern FPS control scheme, and it just worked extremely well for me, so I stuck to playing it on Xbox because of that.
Yeah, I've actually primarily been playing on Xbox, just because it's more convenient for me, because I played Dead by Daylight and GoldenEye's right next to it, so I'll pop in. And initially, like, it turned me off a little bit because there was this weird sound issue at the start during the opening, but then that goes away by and large, and the game mostly runs fine. There is like occasional stuttering in the game that I don't think is on Switch and not in the original 64 version either that bugs me, but the controls pretty much work great. Because not only did they adapt it for the controller, but they even upgraded a few things about it. One, you can crouch easily in the Xbox One. You don't have to like hold R and tap C down, and then if you tap R again, it pops you out crouching. No, it actually acts as a functional, modern crouch. Love that. So you can almost treat it as more of a cover-based shooter than you could before, and that's really fun. Secondly, dual analog works great on it. Love that. And then now, when you aim manually, you can strafe as opposed to just leaning. So that's also cool, especially when you have like a sniper rifle, like in the Dam, and that's just a lot of fun. So even though the Xbox version runs weird compared to Switch at times, I think I actually prefer that one. But I think it's fine on Switch too, and especially since the Switch is technically more faithful to the 64 version. This kind of depends what you're looking for. If you have an Xbox version though, it's not broken like people are saying it is. It works fine, but Switch is great too, especially with, again, the online multiplayer, which is the first time you can do that officially, and I've been shocked how well that runs.
I'm a resistor of these modern controls. I am. I resist it. I think some of the complaints surrounding these versions of the game are really coming from a place of wanting like remakes or remasters, wanting them to be enhanced rather than uphold fidelity to how these games were originally played. And for me, that is what I want to uphold. I'm looking at GoldenEye on Nintendo 64, and I feel like, yeah, give me that resolution bump. Give me that frame rate bump. But I want to play the game with the way it was designed to be understood and played. And that was not as a modern dual analog stick, run around, aim kind of shooter. That's not what we were doing with our weirdo little N64 controllers, not at all. And yeah, please, Andre.
Jake, are you not familiar with the,
don't do this.
Was it 3.1, 4.1 control setting? We used 2 controllers.
No!
It had dual analog. It had dual analog. You can play that way.
You're right. You're right. But I think GoldenEye on the Nintendo 64 is an iconic video game dripping with artistry. I think that the design of the levels, the missions, the structure of the game is so much of it is about figuring out this thing, meeting it where it's at and saying, okay, I'm gonna work on this and I'm gonna again and again and again until I become a master, until I've done it right, until I can do it like I'm not even thinking. And I think that that should be emulated in the game's control. It's the structure of playing the game meeting the style of the game's design. I like going back to this old game and going, whoa, this feels weird in the hand. I think all of us, we're GameXplain people, we know how to play video games. We expect more than the average person when we pick up a video game, pick up a controller, that we're kind of gonna get it. And we can breeze through tutorials, we can breeze through level 1 because we have a level of understanding that already is at a certain threshold. And this game confronts that. You turn this game on and it says, you do not know how to play this. You've got to relearn, reset your brain, go in, meet the art on its own terms. And for that reason, I really like what this version of the game is doing, because I think that's what it's confronting modern players with. And I had a really good, I played most of the campaign. I think the control setting I changed it to was 1.3, but I didn't like remap any of the buttons or anything like that. Had a good time. Enjoyed it.
But you played it without, you didn't play it with a Nintendo 64 controller, right?
I played it with the Pro controller.
Okay, so then I'm a little bit confused though.
You broke Joey.
I just don't have it. I don't have it, Joey. I don't have it. You know, if I did,
if you're talking about playing the game the way it was meant to be played,
yeah,
wouldn't that mean you'd have to play it on a Nintendo 64 controller then, and not like the Pro controller?
I mean, yes and no. Like, I'd have to play it, like, wired a certain distance from my television, if that's what we're trying to do. You know what I mean? Like, there's all these things on top of it. But I think that there is a specific... I think the energy of what I'm describing is in being confronted with something that is not immediately recognizable to my hands. Being confronted with this idea of, oh my God, in the same way that I don't understand this level and I'm running around trying to solve the objective, this controller, I have to think about this. I'm confronted by this mechanism and I need to figure it out. That's what I'm describing.
Yeah, I mean, I respect that general idea and ethos for the game overall. I think the problem, though, is when it comes to playing with a non-64 controller on Switch, is that the way the buttons aren't mapped aren't necessarily faithful to the original game. Like, it's making us think about it in a way that wasn't intended. So it's adding an additional layer of complexity that didn't exist on the 64. Right. And that's where I think that that's I think the biggest problem with the Switch port is the fact that we had to make a whole video showing you how to fix the game, the controls more specifically, if you don't have a N64 controller. It's awesome that you're able to figure it out, Jake, without needing that video. But I feel like for most people, it's going to be an issue because not only do they not, I think not only is a controller kind of weird for this game in general without it being remapped, but the controls are just mapped poorly. Like they've been for other 64 games as well. And I think that's the biggest issue with GoldenEye and every other Switch and most other Switch Online games is that Nintendo puts no care into how they remap these things. Because there apparently is one exception, I guess, Sin and Punishment. They did remap it to make more sense. I wish you would just do that on a case-by-case basis, just because I feel like they could make it feel way better and more accessible for those who don't realize that the game wasn't intended to be played with the way it's mapped now, if they don't have a 64 controller. And that's why I think the Xbox version out of the gate is the better version, because it's mapped in a sensible way that will make sense to anyone who's played a shooter these days. So I appreciate that. And I found even for me, I'm like, oh, Xbox feels really good, especially with the enhancements I mentioned earlier as well. That being said, I think once you remap 64 for myself or you play with 64 controller, it works fine too. It's not busted, as people are saying. You shouldn't have to take that step to make it work for some, but I think it's by and large, fine. So
yeah, Andre, I will say, if you ever look at that chart that's like, here is how we mapped the N64 controller to Switch controls, an alien made that chart. I literally have no idea what would possess somebody to be like, you know what that button should be? You hold the trigger and press this button.
Yep.
And then there's some, and I think that is a criticism of Nintendo Switch Online more than it is this port. Because what's interesting to me, and I wonder if you all have an opinion about this, is that when people are criticizing like GoldenEye on N64, I always look at it and I'm like, you're just describing Nintendo Switch Online. Like, this is just a part of Nintendo Switch Online. Like, what are you talking about?
It kind of speaks to a broader point, Jake, actually. I think GoldenEye is that big. Like, it's brought people to Switch Online that weren't playing the games before, and I think now they're starting to run up against some of the issues that other people have had. And I think they are more pronounced in GoldenEye as well, with it being, a pseudo-dual-stick game in some ways. Right. And I think it's kind of exasperating the issues that had already existed that may not have been as pronounced in those other games. So I think it's a variety of factors here, but GoldenEye is a big game. It's a big game, it's a big deal. It's coming out on multiple platforms, especially when you do that head-to-head comparison with it feeling, to me at least, like not great on on Switch initially on the Pro Controller, whereas it felt great on Xbox. And so it does kind of stand out in that sense. But I think there's also more to it, and that's the fact that GoldenEye comes from a very different era. Like, this game feels unique, for better or worse these days. I think it's great. I'm having a ton of fun going back. I think I actually appreciate it more now than I did back in the day. Because when I was a kid, I played the campaign. I thought it was, fun. I enjoyed it. But I was all about the multiplayer. That's what I cared about. That's me and my friends would race home every day. We'd watch our Pokemon anime. We'd hop on GoldenEye, and that was it. That's all we needed. It was perfect. I think I'm appreciating the campaign more now for what it does, which is it kind of makes it feel like Bond. Like, it makes it feel like a secret agent where you're not just going through these levels Doom style that you can try, especially if you're playing an agent. But like, you actually kind of have to think about what you're doing, and it doesn't lay it out for you. There are no on-screen HUD markers showing you exactly where to go. The mission objectives are vague and arguably too opaque at points. And you kind of have to figure it out. And I can see for some, even myself at times, it can be frustrating, but the levels are just small enough, despite being pretty large in the few examples, that I feel like it kind of encourages you to just keep trying it, figuring it out, and kind of reassessing what is the game asking of me right now, and how am I going to accomplish that objective. And that's what I like about it, because it's not just a kind of linear, brainless modern shooter. Not that they all are, and not that that's necessarily a bad thing, but it does make you feel treat the game differently than a lot of games ask of you.
Heck yeah. The amount of prodding in modern games, that's a whole other conversation. But sometimes I feel like I'm being just prodded down a path the entire time I play a game. And what you described, Andre, is what I love about coming back to this. It completely took me by surprise how much I fell in love with GoldenEye on NSO. Turned it on the first time thinking I would play maybe a level, never play it again, and now I feel like I'm most of the way through the campaign.
Wow.
What it reminds me of is pop songs. How if you've never heard a pop song before, you're like, how do I know the words to this already? Because there's just stuff that is so recognizable, so in our culture, that we've become so used to it that we recognize where music's gonna go, and part of any art is about your expectations. It's about understanding them and playing on them. And I think that this game, GoldenEye, is like listening to like Mozart. It's like listening to a sonata. It's like, I don't know where this is going to go in a way that the people of that era would have. So it's foreign to me. It's hard to understand. There's something about this that isn't making any sense. And it is so cool to have a game like that. It is so cool to have something that resets my expectations as somebody that plays video games and makes me go, oh my God, I am at square one. I need to sit down and like study this like it's a pen and paper puzzle almost. And that really invigorated a lot of my love for this game. And I think slowing me down, making me like try to learn everything and understand it, also led to me examining things that I would have blown past in other games. The music, the sound effects, the way that enemies react to being shot, the level design, people popping out of the sides, doing like silly, stuff, and the way that this game is memorable and iconic to me is so special. And I don't know if I would have appreciated that the same way if I could just clock in, clock out the way that I can almost any modern video game.
Joey, is GoldenEye indeed the Mozart of gaming?
Sure. Whatever. Here's my thing with it. I played the game over the weekend. I played up to the rocket silo mission. And the whole
through, yeah.
I had to replay that like maybe 4 or 5 times because on the secret agent difficulty, I was suggested to go down back to agent because if I wanted to keep playing the game like Doom or something, I should do that. But I still wanted to experience those additional objectives that you get when you increase the difficulty. Which is a game design element I can very much appreciate. However, I am a father. I only have about maybe 2 hours to play a day. In my game time, I don't want to keep replaying the same levels because I missed a scientist that looks like every other scientist in the game that I'm supposed to look for. I've been practicing dropping games I'm not enjoying instead of having to try and see them through to the end. I dropped GoldenEye because I just wasn't having fun with it because of those design elements that you mentioned. Again, design elements I can appreciate, but with my limited schedule, I just don't have the time.
Yeah, I can see that. There's definitely some antiquated decisions here as well. Or maybe, I don't want to say antiquated necessarily. I think a couple elements are. But there are some design choices here that do stand out these days, like I said, for better or worse. And it does kind of require you thinking about the game differently from a modern shooter, and I can see why they could be annoying. Myself, I got stuck in Silo 2, and I'm one who tries to avoid looking up solutions to games. I just prefer not to whenever I can. I looked it up. I mean, I literally have no idea what's asking of me, and I was looking for little tiny computer chips on all these tables or whatever. And that's kind of like the strength and weakness of GoldenEye. Like, because it doesn't lay out the objectives for you. It tells you what you need to do. It doesn't necessarily tell you how to do them. And the dossier before the match, or before each level, gives you a bit of an idea. And I kind of like that. It kind of makes you feel a little bit more like a spy, like you're kind of figuring things out, you know, on the fly.
I love how like it's written like, oh, 007, this mission, there's not a strip club for miles, you'll probably be fine. They're always just talking about how horny he is all the time.
Is that's Moneypenny largely,
Yeah.
right? I think Moneypenny,
that's awesome.
I love how you have the different branches, like, you know, checking in, you know, and it's all good. But yeah, like some decisions like still annoy me. Like there are points of the game where there's infinite enemies that just keep respawning like Monster Closet style, and you don't know when you're at that point or not. So like, should I be wasting my time here with these guys or not? And then the inventory, some of the items you need are buried in the clock screen, and it's easy to forget about those, or the clock pause screen. It's easy to forget that you need to equip them from there, which is something Perfect Dark actually improved on. So yeah, I can totally see it like bumping up against modern expectations. But I think once you get in the mindset of the game, like by and large, I've been having a great time going back to it. I'm like, oh man, this reminds me of like almost a little Hitman style. But I like it. The fact that it's not just laid out for you in that sense. But Tom, how have you been feeling going back to it?
Like you were saying, you like multiplayer most back in the day. I liked single player almost as much as multiplayer back in the day, just because how the difficulty scales up, and like you can play through levels on Agent and then go to Secret Agent, and there's more objectives now, right? It's like a new challenge in a way, and it's not just the enemies getting tougher. It's tougher because there's more stuff you have to do in each level while juggling the difficulty bump. And that's something I always enjoyed back then. It's so unique, and like there is stealth in a way, like using the silencer does help against some enemies so they don't know you're around. Stuff like that really made GoldenEye unique back then for me, and just I never beat 007 mode. I don't think I'll beat it this time around either, but maybe
so
with
hard.
a better frame rate I will. Yeah, it's really, really tough. If you beat it, I'm impressed.
I thought I could do it, Tom, but I got hung up on the second level freaking facility. It just murdered me right away. I'm like, all right, I'm dropping down to Secret Agent. And I actually don't know if I ever beat the game with Secret Agent, but I've been enjoying it on that level. I was gonna mention something too about like the level design, and that is just how it still feels kind of very distinct to me, because what's interesting about this game, a couple of things actually, is it started off as an on-rails shooter. It was meant to be a light gun style game. And then they totally changed it up, and they went in the completely opposite direction, where they made it these non-linear levels where you don't fully know where things are. You need to, you know, go find everything and track down these objectives. And when it came to the level design, it was done by two separate teams. They had one team making the levels, then they had the other team filling it up with stuff. So the level designers had no idea where anything was going to go objective-wise. And that sounds like a terrible way of designing a game, but I think it works for GoldenEye. Like, it just feels like...
It's kind of brilliant, really.
Yeah, they feel kind of like real places. In some cases, they were built on the designs of the movie, like Facility, for instance,
right?
And the blueprints, and yeah, it just kind of feels like you're exploring like a real place. One of my favorite things in this game, one of my favorite things in any game, is when you're captured. I love it when you're captured and you have to find a way out. And in this case, you have to use a watch magnet to pull the keys to you to unlock yourself. Love that. Yeah, that's it, Jake. Exactly.
So cool. I love the watch, dude. The watch to me is like one of the most iconic. It's so cool. I love the look of it. I love the health screen. I feel that's way about so much stuff in this game, that it's just like memorable and interesting. And I even like, this is such a stupid little thing, but you know the auto aim, so you see your guy's like little hand move in front of you? I think that is really visually interesting and cool. Every single first-person shooter looks exactly the same. Your gun is positioned in the same spot and your reticle moves, but you know what I mean? You're like on this weird dolly. Right. And I think it's cool in this game that it has a different visual style where you see your guy like go, oh yeah, dude, it's just cool. Yeah.
Bring back the shooters on Wii. All I'm saying. Yes.
Yeah, there we go. Exactly. Like that GoldenEye you had earlier, the Wii GoldenEye. Yeah, it's interesting, Jake. I don't know if GoldenEye invented it, but I feel like it might did, being the auto aim, which is something, or as it's called these days, like assist aim or aim assist. And yeah, and it's still a factor, but they work differently than GoldenEye did, where it's almost imperceptible these days. Like it's meant to be more out of, outside, out of mind. It's there, it's helping you, but you don't really know it. GoldenEye makes it very obvious, and it almost feels like a sixth sense, like where you know where it's gonna hone in on. And there's just like good feel to it. Like actually getting back to Silo, even though I had to look up the solution, like running down those hallways, like just bang bang bang, bang bang bang, bang bang bang.
Yes.
It feels so good. And there's like a chunkiness to the gun and sound design that just makes it feel so, and even the impacts on the enemies, even though there's not like a lot of blood effects or anything, it just feels good. And I don't know what that is exactly, but it just nailed the feel of it, and I think it still holds up, especially with the rumble pack of the 64 controller. We can feel the vibration of the bullets.
100%. Yeah, there's something about that feeling in the hand, watching it happen, the sounds. Shout out to the sounds in this game. Just one of the GOATs, I think. I said this to you all earlier, but like the sound of reloading a gun at one point in this game, it like incepted me. Because if you were to ask me to describe like, what does a gun reloading sound like? I didn't realize straight up it was from this game. Lodged in my childhood. I was like, oh God, they got me, dude. So yeah, there's something about this that really like works, and I think the theme park design of like all these different levels and doing things really had a huge influence on modern first-person shooter single-player campaigns. Because I think it really came from this. So yeah, powerful stuff here. Love this game.
I'll say it's hilarious to find out Grant Kirkhope made the pause music in 20 minutes.
That's amazing. Yeah, like I love how that's become a meme. Like even before this game's re-released, like I come across on TikTok, like people like dancing to the watch thing. Like you didn't need to go that hard, and it has.
Yes.
He didn't even go. It wasn't even its full power, dude.
And yeah, the music the presentation overall like still holds up with the lens of it being a 25-year-old game. Of course, the character models look like Roblox style. The environments aren't super high poly. They are still kind of oddly impressive in their own way. And of course, there's no voice acting. That's probably the thing that stands out the most. Is you're having these these text-based conversations with like Natalia or whatever her name is, or Boris, and that's a little weird. And that's something that Perfect Dark actually improved on. But I think by and large, like one of my favorite things actually is how everything you collect has a 3D model. Like, so you go to the pause screen, you can see a full version of it, including like the camera has like a 007 logo on it. The VHS tape you collect in the Siberia jail cell, it's a GoldenEye VHS tape. Like, it's the movie itself. So you want to talk about Inception? Like, it's all kinds of meta right there.
Oh man.
But yeah, I don't know.
Speaking of the watch, it's like what Jake was saying with the auto aim. You see your hand moving around, so you're more like on the watch. You bring it up to your face, so you are more in tune as being Bond in a way.
Yeah, except when you're being shot as it's happening.
Well, if you pause when you're being shot and you die, it's your fault.
Just because you brought up the character models, I do want to say too though that there is a readability to this game that is beautiful. When we were doing our multiplayer stream, I always knew it was like you were playing as Bond, and it was so easy even from a distance for me to be like, oh dang, there he is. There's James. All right, and then like there's something, it's so well done in that way, and I even really like the menus. I really like the folders, the character select screen, all those photos, your reticle being the crosshair little logo thing, and like shooting stuff, like all that. It gels together so well. It's really good.
The dossier presentation, like that's where the menus are. The Xbox has a nice touch where on each file screen it has like a secret agent name based on your Xbox Live game tag, and that's cool.
Oh, that's cool.
Oh, I was gonna mention one thing we forgot to mention near the port section at the beginning, is that something else I appreciate, even perhaps more with GoldenEye than some of the other games, is for one, of course, it's running at higher resolution. I think 720p on Switch. Is it 4K on Xbox, Joey?
Yep.
Okay, yeah. I don't know if you necessarily need that high of a resolution, but it's there if you want it. But also, the frame rate's way more stable, and for the first time on Switch Online, it runs in widescreen. The game originally supported widescreen. They embraced it, and it looks amazing. Especially because you're talking about multiplayer, Jake, where it is readable. It's even more readable now than it was back in the day, because you have that crystal clarity, widescreen, you have a wider viewpoint than we had before, pretty much. It's shocking how well that enhances everything. So I'm loving playing through it in widescreen, which, by the way, another odd choice with the Switch version is that it's not enabled by default. You have to go turn it on, even though they advertised it in the trailers. It's like, that should be on by default.
to the source material, and that is just Nintendo trying to gaslight you into thinking they added stuff.
Yeah.
Like they keep, you know what I mean? They keep like having these tweets, and I'm like, this, you guys didn't do this. But to kind of transition, I think into the multiplayer. I think that's where we were going. Even when the game is not readable, like the first map we played was that caves. I was even like, okay, this is a part of the game though. Like this is cool. The fact that it's like, okay, how can I use the fact that it's harder to see in certain spots where it's really dark to my advantage? How do I like get accustomed to that? How do I adjust as the player? Andre, when you had the flag, trying to like stick the flag into the so we couldn't see it, like I totally saw how that was working, and that to me is why I think this game holds up. It's because these systems, it's not that they're broken, it's just that you have to alter your approach to interacting with them. Whereas in a modern game, these would be mistakes. These would be things that like, oh, you were taking advantage of things in a way that like you're not supposed to. But because you have so much freedom here, I think that it has something going for it.
I don't even know if I'd call this multiplayer unbalanced as much as it is chaotic. And I totally think that's what they were going for. Just pure utter chaos, especially when you got a mode that's just slaps only, or technically karate chops, because let's be real. I just love the moment where we're all just crouching and we're just slapping each other. Yeah, I totally see why the multiplayer is like the most iconic part of GoldenEye. You don't really hear the campaign talked about as much, because most of the people who have nostalgia for GoldenEye were the ones who invited friends over and played 4-player split screen. And it's so much fun. At first I was really annoyed with it at first, but as I got the hang of it, and as we started playing with those modes, that's when I started having the most fun. Like, when we got to slappers only, that's when it clicked. That's when it slapped for me.
Nice. You could say GoldenEye slaps then?
Yes. Yeah. Yes, it slaps.
Yeah, and I was actually shocked how well it worked with Switch Online too. Like, I've had some really bad experiences on Switch Online, but this time I played with 4 or 5 different groups of our fans, with which are all over the world. We played as a group just before the stream with Jake on the East Coast, Joey and myself on the West Coast, and Tom up in a whole different country, being not that far from me, but still different country in Canada. And it ran flawlessly. It ran better than it did natively on the 64 locally, with a stable frame rate. I didn't notice any major input delay. It just felt great, and none of that characteristic music getting screwed up from the from the slower possible pace of online. I thought it ran great, and I had a great time. It really took me back to 25 years ago, and I do think, kind of to your point, Joey, like, if they were to make this game today, as is, and made it like an online-focused experience, it will get destroyed. People are like, it's broken, it's unbalanced, it's unfair, but that's part of the magic. That's part of the fun. Like, you have to embrace that. Like, for instance, in one of our matches, I was up in like the crow's nest area with like a rocket launcher. I was like, I know these maps like the back of my hand, right? Like, I was shooting people through walls, but I know the explosions and how they interact, and I don't know how it was for you guys. I was having a blast, even though I knew.
Of course you were having a blast, Andre, you camper.
Exactly.
I loved it. I loved it. It felt like we were playing like a pre-scripted event, and I just like I was thinking so much. I was so in the game in a way that was not like just trying to like perform the functions the game wants you to perform, and like really like thinking about the map and how everything was working. And I love just like watching. It was obvious that Andre knew more than I did, and it was cool that that was reflected in the game in such a easy for me to see and recognize way. It was like there were times where I was like, oh, I'm safe, I'm around this tiny little corner or whatever, and then that little shot would get fired off. I'd kind of see it in my peripheral vision from Andre's screen, because we're doing split screen, and then it would hit me and I would learn something. And there was something about that I was like, man, there's a game here that jumps off the page and is about your understanding of it more than it is about like just the firepower of the game. There's a cool metagame in my imagination that I really, really like.
Also, like, to spawn in certain locations, like, oh no, I'm here, like, I'm in the washroom, the bathroom. It's like, I'm screwed in this situation because everyone's around there, like, with grenade
the
launchers.
Spawn points are incredibly broken. It's hilarious.
Her facility with because it's based off a single-player map, to have the giant choke point in the middle with 2 doors where all the battles can result in, like, if you just camp there. Stuff like that, I feel like I don't see that as much these days, and it's just unique.
Oh yeah, exactly. I think games these days are so focused on balanced and good game design, and there is absolutely credit to that. Like if ever a game were broken or unfair, it'd be terrible. But there is something magical about the way GoldenEye does it. Like and it results in things that you just won't see these days. Like you won't see a lot of what's in GoldenEye ever again, probably. Like for instance, in Facility, how you can just stand in front of a door and prevent someone from going through it,
Yeah,
and then
close the door.
but if you have a gun, a strong enough gun, you can even shoot through the door and target the one on the other side, which could benefit the person being held back. Who knows? And even for as experienced as I am with GoldenEye, and for as good as I am at the game, I wasn't dominating these matches. I only won maybe one or two. And it seemed like the rest of you figured it out pretty quick. You found your own ways of maneuvering and tackling
crouch
the objectives. Yeah, crouch slap. Yes.
I think the crouch slap thing is funny too, because I really like how changing the mode or changing like the weapons or whatever really like had an effect on my feeling playing the game. And it was like playing different games and like what was going on in my head. It wasn't just like in a fighting, like in a Smash Bros type thing, where like I'm basically doing the same thing the whole time. I was like thinking different things based on the map, based on the when we did teams, and like me and Tom were on a team. I loved this feeling of we did this whole stream and then we ended it with teams. I never had this feeling of we were in the same room and in my mind's eye I was like, oh my god, we've both like got our guns back to back right now. Yeah, we're like a standoff, circling the room, and I was like, this is awesome.
Like, let's do this, Jake.
Yeah, it was so cool. I felt the camaraderie. It was really good.
So and Golden Gun mode, where it's like one person superpowered and everyone's like ideally going after them, but you can still go after each other.
It's the one time auto aim doesn't work very well.
I'll point out though, the biggest tragedy of the GoldenEye port and HD visuals is being able to see proximity mines. They are no longer a blur on the walls that blend in. They are much crisper now, and it is much more easy to see them.
I do remember the days of like you just being killed by an invisible force. Like an explosion randomly happens constantly, and that has been undermined a little bit with the HD visuals. And that's actually what Tom. That's one of the things that annoyed me about Perfect Dark, because the proximity mines had that detector where it would just show you where all the proximity mines are. I'm like, no, you're ruining the mines. The key is not to know where they are.
A weird thing about the multiplayer online that I'm curious if you all have thoughts on is, a popular thing in online shooters is time to kill, TTK. Yeah. And obviously in what we just played, it was super long. Like you have to shoot at somebody for a long time to kill them, whereas like most modern shooters, TTK is like half a second. It's like, you pull that trigger, done. And I felt like, I thought it was so fun to just have this different kind of thing. Doesn't really exist anymore. We're all on the radar, no hiding.
Yep.
And it made me like sad that this kind of game just like we don't try to apply like some modernity to this kind of game anymore, because I actually thought part of the fun here was, okay, I've started a battle, I got the first hit on Andre, now is he gonna run or is he gonna try to challenge me? Right. And then like what divulges from that experience where like, oh, Tom knew there was this one area where he could go back and forth and it was gonna mess me up, and I thought that was so funny and like creative and cool.
And if that person has shields, it's like, why are you dead yet? Oh, yes, shields.
Yes, so funny. Oh.
Yeah, that's a great point, Jake. Yeah, like a lot of modern shooters are like you pop in, bam, 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 you're dead, and then you have to wait for the respawn. GoldenEye, GoldenEye's quick paced without it going extreme on the kill to death or time to death or whatever it's called, KTD. And what's fun about GoldenEye 2 is you can kind of make it that way if you want. Perfect Dark Lane to do it even more, where you can just drop everyone's health and effectively make it one-hit kills, and that does like really drop down that time to death ratio. But otherwise, yeah, the way we were playing today with like standard health, body armor scattered about, which basically doubles your health and kind of creates like choke points on the map or hotspots that everyone's kind of going to. And yeah, and the way you were describing it earlier, Jake, it made me think GoldenEye is basically a party game shooter. Like that's basically what it is. It's basically the Smash Brothers of first-person shooters, and I love that. And it's something I feel like we don't get a whole lot of, especially in the AAA space. I know there are some like indie shooters that take more pages from GoldenEye's book, for instance. Yeah. But even then, I think there's still something just special about GoldenEye that we haven't really seen outside of its sequel being Perfect Dark.
Oh, I love that. I love that comment about there was this imagined scenario when we were playing where, because you know where everybody is, and because the amount of time it takes to end a battle is so long, where like 2 people would be fighting, and there was actually enough time for you to get over there and be like, okay, now I'm entering this, and I'm gonna, you know, and you 2 are focused with each other, and like that's like such a fun, I think, imagined scenario for a game like this. Whereas, like you were saying, in a lot of modern shooters now, like you could never have that because it is like, okay, who got the jump on the other person?
Right.
Yeah, so much fun. Wow, party shooter, that is cool. Bring it back.
Bring it back.
What's funny though, Jake, is that despite all that, back in the day, I used to have this giant cardboard box called the Arena. And what it would do is it would turn GoldenEye into a bit more of a serious shooter, because it would give everyone like a viewpoint into only their quadrant of the screen. It had mirrors. You had to sit behind the TV with the mirrors, and like it made it so you could only see your section and no one else could screen peek, for instance. So we turned off radar, we'd have it so no one could screen peek, and it was also amazing. It felt like a LAN session for its time, and that was super fun too, where like it kind of felt like we each have our own like little tiny monitor, and no one knows where we are until like we pop around the corner for a jump scare or something. So,
but if you want the signature GoldenEye online experience, go back to 2010, because Nintendo Wi-Fi connection is no more.
Oh my god.
When we were playing on our stream, were you all screen peeking at all? Because I was absorbed in my square. I could not even for a second go, I'm gonna see what somebody...
I barely did that, but I think it was just to see who was killing me already.
Right,
So, yeah, it was really tough to try and screen peek.
That's funny, Joey. It was like kill cam. It was like, okay, oh, there they are. Okay.
Yes.
I wasn't doing it. I was trying not to do it too much, but like it's second nature to me at this point. Like I'm watching almost the other screens as much as I'm watching my own, you know, because it's not hard to identify like where in the stage they are. I'm like, okay, bam, I'll go get them there. But with the radar, that kind of mitigates it as well, because it gives you a rough idea where people are. At least.
See, that's really cool to me that there was that difference. Sorry, Tom, really quick, that difference in our experience, because that's, I think, at the core of what GoldenEye is, about how you interface with it, and stuff that isn't just the game itself, but your relationship to it. And that's like really, I think that's so cool that like you were playing the game and I was playing the game, and I don't think you were like way more successful than me, but we had like such different like lived-in experiences that were totally cool and fine. But Tom, you were gonna say?
I was going to say quickly, when there's no radar on, you get the fun of somebody just looking down at the ground or a wall texture super zoomed in, so you have no idea where they are, because there's only so many textures.
One of my favorite things to do is, it was unfortunately on the stage it wasn't available to us because of us playing 4-player, which by the way, like you want to talk about remasters or even like modest updates, something that would have been amazing had they done for this game, since it's running on much more powerful hardware, is maybe we could play the full slate of multiplayer stages, because what GoldenEye does is it blocks off some of the more complex or bigger ones when you have 3 or 4 people. So we were stuck with a smaller amount, whereas if we had just 2 people or 3, we'd be able to play on more. But one of my favorites is, I forget what the stage is, the one with the giant TV and you can go outside, the Siberian. Yeah. And when you go outside, there's like, they didn't even texture the full area because you're not meant to see it normally, but in multiplayer you can. So there's like this giant black wall outside, and I would, in flag tag, as Bond, like I was doing in Caves Jake, I'd go out there, go to the black wall, I would just like crawl along the exterior, and people could never find me. Like, where the hell is this guy? Because you look at my screen, it's pure black. If they try to find me, knowing even where I am, like they see nothing because I'm a black character with a flag sticking through this invisible or this non-existent or this black wall. And yeah, great times, good memories.
That's so awesome, and I just feel like with a modern video game, there is such like right now in the space, there is such an allegiance to fidelity to real life that they would never want stuff like that. They would never want a world that functions in its own like weird way, and that to me is why this is so cool, because it like is its own contained thing that I feel like I'm looking down at. I love that idea. Man, that's so cool.
And also, on top of that, like, even if you lose, there's different awards, like most professional or dishonorable, other things you can look forward to, and it's like, to see how you did, and it's like a bonus, so like, not everyone is a loser.
That feature that is in Splatoon 3, similarly at the end of a match, came from GoldenEye. GoldenEye, as far as I'm aware, basically popularized the idea, and is still inspiring games to this day, and I love that. And what's fun, too, is, GoldenEye is arguably one of the first shooters on consoles to really nail it, to really figure out how you can how you can do a shooter on a console with a console controller. You know, arguably Halo may have done it better, or at least more akin to how PCs handled it, and kind of gets more of the praise these days than GoldenEye does. But GoldenEye also, like, you know, really standardized or you know, made popular multiplayer on console as well for shooters. And what's even fun about that is that it wasn't planned initially. Like the multiplayer in this game is basically half-assed. Like, it was a last-minute addition. You know, they came up with some maps. Like, they did it as a test just to see if it worked at all. And I think they ended up delaying the game to fully implement it. I forget the exact details, but it was really a last-minute thing. And the fact it turned out as well as it did is amazing, and that we're still having fun with it 25 years later, despite, you know, generations of shooters coming and going since.
It reminds me of like great movies and stuff, like where you hear about like, oh, an actor like improv'd that famous line. It's like, you know what I mean? Like, that's what it reminds me of. It's like, oh yeah, this thing that is beloved, it was an accident. Like, yeah, that's really cool. Do we want to give it scores?
I think we do. I think we do, right? Cool. All right. Let's start with you, Jake, actually. What are on our review scale, what do you give GoldenEye playing it these days? How are you feeling?
Mind blown.
What?
Oh, that's
wow.
The highest score.
Man, all right, I respect it.
I feel this way about this video game that, like, I genuinely am like, I don't know, I can't name for you another video game I feel this way about. I feel that this belongs in this should be recognized as like one of the greatest things of all time, and I think it always will be.
I love that. I love it. I respect it. That's great. Yeah. Well, let's go to the possible opposite end of the spectrum with Joey. Joey, how have you been enjoying GoldenEye on our review scale? Like, what would you give this game?
I'm mixed, honestly. Like, I understand its legacy, and I totally get why it's iconic. But for me, as somebody just with limited time on his hands, I want to just relax and enjoy. I don't want to have to sit through dossiers. I don't have to try and find stuff. I can't find these darn scientists and like, oh, hey, you got to find a safe key. Okay, here's a key, but it's called the big key. What am I supposed to do with the key? Oh, it's the key to get to the key. Yeah, I didn't have that much fun with it. I'm sorry, y'all.
Oh, you did mention earlier to me, I think, weren't you trying to play the game like Doom? And that's all about finding keys? You should love this game. You should love the keys. Oh my gosh.
I'm done. Goodbye.
All right. Tom, what would you get? Oh, actually, real quick, Joey, were you accounting for the multiplayer in your review, though?
Oh, multiplayer is good. Yeah, I enjoy the multiplayer.
So if you account for that, then what's your
still a mixed.
Still mixed.
It's
okay.
Still mixed.
All right.
Yeah.
Tom, how about you? What do you get this game as a modern day experience?
Okay, for me, I still remember the old one a lot, and I take into consideration things like how much time they might have spent on the port and stuff like that. As modern day experience, honestly, currently, I would say liked it a lot. The multiplayer is great, super fun. Single player, maybe at times I was struggling a bit. Like, it still didn't fully come back to me, the feeling of it. And just to think at times that, like, the Rare staff had a port at one point that never came out. You're thinking, like, what could have been? And this one's more of a straight port. But to credit, though, to be not too greedy, like, all I could ever ask for is good frame rate. And that's what I've got here. So makes it super playable this day and age. So I really appreciate that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think too many people would argue that like a full remaster of this game would be amazing, and it exists, just not officially released, unfortunately. But once again, Tom, yeah, there we go. Yes,
I mean, it's more like remaster. I wouldn't even call this a remake. It's something completely different. But yeah,
no, it's yeah, they just wrote on the GoldenEye name and made something totally different. But there is a, I believe, fully finished, remaster or remake, I forget what it is, that was meant to come out to the original Xbox, as I recall, or 360 rather,
360,
and never did. Yeah, and that's sad,
tragic.
Once again, Tom, you basically, I was really hoping you were gonna go loved so we could have the whole array of scores here, but I gotta agree, I'm gonna go liked a lot. I think there's a possibility it could grow back into loved, but for right now, I'm just having a total blast with it, but not at the same level I did, as a kid. I don't know if it could possibly ever recapture that magic, but I have been surprised by how absorbed I've got back into the campaign. I'm like, oh, I'll play a few levels just to remind myself enough to discuss it. And I got stuck there for like hours. You know, as one who's currently addicted to Dead by Daylight, anything that can keep me away from that game says a lot about the game that replaces it. So yeah, and having fun with the campaign, had a complete blast going back to the multiplayer with you guys. And you know, we make this more of a regular thing. You know, I could see this continuing to grow in my esteem. For right now, liking it a lot. Holds up well, especially with, I mean, not only does it hold up well, it arguably holds up better with the widescreen, HD, if you adjust the controls, especially on Xbox, which are great, and the online is so good. I really recommend playing with your friends online. I did a quick poll on GameXplain on our Twitter just to see how people, just see, like, is it just me having the great online connection with everyone seemingly? And it seems by and large of everyone that has tried it, 8% of the people had a nearly flawless connection, 9%, or rather, let me correct this, because most people haven't tried it online at all. So 1/3 of the people basically had nearly flawless, 1/3 of the people said it was okay, and then 1/3 and just under 1/3 thought it was bad. So it seems like it is still, you know, depending on where you live and the connections, but by and large, it seems like people are having a good online experience with this game. So play online, it's great, and yeah, I'm glad it's finally here. Now let's see if we can get that remaster one of these days.
I can't believe I'm coming out where I thought we were all on the same page. I thought it was undeniable. So this was a surprise. This was a surprise for me, I guess. All right.
Hey,
yeah, I mean, I think. You go ahead.
I was gonna say quick, our multiplayer session that rekindled like those 4-player
so fun.
memories from back in the day. So.
Honestly, I could have kept that stream going for a while, but
me too, dude. I was having the time of my life.
That was so fun. We have to do more. So chat, let us know if you want, you know, comments, let us know if you want to see more of us streaming the game. It was so fun. I had fun playing with our community. It's been a total blast. So the fact that we can finally do this now officially is great. With that, everyone, I think we're done talking about GoldenEye for now. Thank you so much for watching. And of course, keep it locked on GameXplain for tons more on Nintendo Switch Online and everything else Nintendo as well. We'll catch you later. Bye, everyone.